Welcome to episode 62 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So we're starting a new book.
Yay!
Which is your favorite time of the month.
Yay!
Yeah, so this month we're doing Neon Gods by Katee Robert. And it's just kind of funny because we recently did A Touch of Darkness. Was that January?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we started the year with that. And when I had suggested Neon Gods to you, you thought I meant A Touch of Darkness.
Yeah, to do for the podcast.
Yeah. So it was just kind of funny. And we figured, like, it'd be fun to just do another Persephone and Hades retelling since we are fans.
Yes, we are definitely fans. And because, too, Touch of Darkness is now fresh in our minds. So, you know, it's sort of, we're good to
compare and contrast.
And we will. And it's going to happen. And I'm sorry if you're not here for that, but you just can't help it. Yeah.
And I think they came out near the, like, around about the same time. It feels like, anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess I got into this book first because I had mentioned it to you, but I was in like a book club with a podcast that I listened to, and they picked this book to do, and I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. So that's kind of how I ended up reading this one. I hadn't read any of Katee Roberts' other stuff when I read this book. But I've since fallen down a hole and read a bunch. Even started one of her series like yesterday while I should have been reading Neon Gods. So, you know. But yeah, she has a lot of books and they are very spicy. So I am a big fan of them.
Would you put Neon Gods, like, where would you put it in the ranking of spice level in terms of, like, her stuff? Is it, like, about the same across the board, or, like, do you think the other stuff is spicier or less spicy?
Yeah, I think she kind of has a different range of spiciness, because there was a while where I was just reading one-offs that were, like, it's a series, like, a Touch of Taboo is what it's called. And those books were just pure smut. Very little plot at all.
Right.
Like, one was about, like,
which is sometimes what you really want.
Oh, 100%. I loved it. I was here for it then. But, like, obviously, this book has more plot than that series did.
Yes.
There is obviously some sex scenes in it, but, like, none this week.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah. So, like, it's not as, like, that book, chapter 1, they were having sex.
Love it.
Every chapter they were having sex. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, yeah. So it seems like she, like, this series, and she has another series, that it's the one that I actually just started reading. What is it called again? Wicked Villains, which is all about, it's all about Disney villains.
You were telling me about
getting the girl. So I'm halfway through the first book and it's great, but that one also has maybe more plot. Now that I'm saying that, they have sex very soon in that one too. But I think it has more plot than some of her books that I've read, but it's less plot than this one. She has a range of smuttiness, I would say. But I love them all. It depends what you're, like, looking for.
Right. So I guess I got into this book because you suggested it, but you were also, it's really funny because you were not the only person to suggest this book to me. My aunt also suggested this book to me, and it's really funny because all she said was, I read this book on Libby that I think you would really like. It's a Hades Persephone sort of, like, retelling. And it's all very romancy, and there's, like, a lot of sex and stuff in it. I'm like, well, thank you. My aunt's only like 9 years older. 9. Oh my God. She's 9 years older than me. So we don't really have an aunt niece relationship. It's more of like more of a sisterly sort of a thing. So she said, I read it on Libby, so you can get it there. And like, her friend works at a bookstore, so like she was also like, yeah, and Kristen would really like this book, so like suggested to her. And they did, but I must have forgotten the title or something like that, because when I went to look for it, I found A Touch of Darkness instead. And then I read that. And then I went back and said, I read that book after, and told her what it was called. And she was like, no, that wasn't it. I was like, oh, okay. And then you started talking about Neon Gods. And I was like, okay, well, I suppose I should read this one too. So I did, and it was really good. I really enjoyed that they are very different books. So like, I feel like we can enjoy both equally, separately, and not like, we did say we are of course going to compare them because that's just what you do. But reading one did not take my enjoyment of the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Like, the characters are
so
based
different
on the same myth, but they are very different in action and in personality. And like, the way some of the other characters in the books are, it was kind of funny because like, obviously the last Persephone Hades retelling I read was A Touch of Darkness. So this week we get a character and I'm like, oh, those characters were in the other series, and I forget how they are in this book completely. Like, I don't remember, it's been a while, I guess, but I don't remember like how they act in this book, and like if she's a dick to her. But I just found it kind of funny because I'm like, she was an asshole in the other book. So,
well, and then too, I don't know, I just really appreciate how wildly different the interpretations are. The way they interpreted the worlds are so different, and I really like both.
And like, I also appreciate that like, the Persephone myth is about like does she make a deal with him? Is that correct? Yes, I thought so. So it's just,
he sort of, I think in the original myth, I think he sort of tricks her like into he tricks her into staying in the underworld, but because it was a trick, the mother comes down and sort of intervenes, and that's where they get the 6 month thing.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Because she's like, well, you tricked her, it doesn't count. And he's like, well, then I'll make a deal. And then so he's like, she has to stay with me 6 months, and then she could be up there for 6.
Gotcha.
I think my, like, don't quote me on that, my mythology, I've read it a bunch, but I had not in a while, so.
Yeah. I know. I did a course in high school, but I do not remember anything. Because
you got to do that in high school?
Not high school. I meant university. My brain's not working.
I was going to say, I was like, that would be the most amazing high school.
What were we reading where the high school sounded really cool? It was a book we did recently for this.
Solitaire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, one of them was doing mythology in high school. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. So I guess we'll get into it. So just a heads up, we're not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get a little saucy next week.
Yes. Next week, they will be much more saucy.
Yes. So Katee Robert is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of spicy romance. She has 11 series with, I think, 75 books. I tried to look it up. There were different numbers in different places, so I kind of got confused.
It's hilarious when you look her up on Libby. She has so many books.
Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure on the exact number. I think the issue too is like, I know a few of her series, they like have a book that has 3 of the books in it, so it's not a separate work. So are you counting that as a separate? Anyway, doesn't matter. So the series that we're starting now is the Dark Olympus series, and Neon Gods is the first book. It's a Persephone and Hades retelling. Electric Idol is the second book, and it's about Psyche?
Yeah.
Psyche and Eros. Wicked Beauty is about Achilles,
Patroclus,
and Helen of Troy. Thank you. Radiant Sin is about Apollo and Cassandra. And Cruel Seduction about Aphrodite and
Hephaestus
is going to be published in August of this year. And Midnight Ruin about Eurydice, Orpheus and Charon.
I say Chiron. I don't know.
Chiron? Yeah. Who knows? It's going to be published in January of next year. So I don't know why I decided to read that since I can't say any of the names. But here we go. So there's a lot of books in this series. I've read the first 3, and I actually just bought Radiant Sin this weekend.
Okay.
Last weekend.
So I figured that there would be 4 books, one about each of the sisters. But it doesn't seem to be the case. Because Wicked Beauty, the second one is about Psyche, which is her sister. And Eurydice is one of her sisters.
Yeah.
And then the other sister, I don't remember what the last sister's name is. It begins with a C.
Calypso or something.
So something like that. I think it is Calypso. So like, it's odd. I really thought that she would do a book on each sister.
I kind of felt like the third one was about one of her sisters, but no, I'm a liar. Oh, I remember who it's about now. Never mind. Sorry, completely wrong. The third one is actually about Zeus's sister.
Right, okay. So, Neon Gods is, obviously, like we've said, a Persephone and Hades retelling in a world where Olympus is like a secret country ruled by what's called the 13. And of course, those are the 13, like, heavy-duty deities. But they're not deities in the book.
Yes.
The people of the upper city, what it's called, believes that the Hades line has ended with the last Hades' death, so there are only 12 rulers currently. When Persephone's mother Demeter and Zeus push her into a public engagement to Zeus, she runs and fights to get to the lower city, and who do we think she meets there? So we'll get into the world a little bit because it's a super interesting take on I guess the Greek gods and Olympus and all that jazz. But yeah.
Yeah. 13 or 12 or 11 seems like too many people to rule. Like, it just seems like a disaster waiting to happen.
But I also, it doesn't seem like it's actually 13 people ruling. It seems like it's Zeus ruling and other people just like sort of filling in the gaps as like his underlings a little bit.
I guess it's kind of like regular governments, because like Zeus is like the president or prime minister, and then there's like agriculture is Demeter, and like ocean and trade and shit is Poseidon. So like, that does make sense. So it's exactly like our world. Ta-da! So this week we're doing chapters 1 to 7. And the book starts out, Persephone is hiding from a party that she was forced to go to by her mother. And her mother basically, like, she has to uphold a...
Reputation?
Yes, sure. That word works. She has a reputation to uphold, and, like, she wants her daughters to be public figures, and she is scheming to be more powerful, even though she is already one of the 13. Persephone's sister Psyche comes to find her hiding in what is called the statue room, and there are statues for each of the 13 who rule Olympus. Which is probably like, I liked the way that they kind of introduced this, because Persephone kind of looks around at each one and names them, and it's like,
we get
good to get all their names. So there's Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Demeter, Athena, Ares, Dionysus, Hermes, Artemis, Apollo, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and then there's one statue that's covered with a black sheet, and it's Hades. And it's covered because there's currently no Hades in that position, because Hades is apparently a legacy line. So it goes from
father to
I'm assuming.
son.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's only men that can be. It kind of seems like
it seems gender specific, because
yeah,
the Heras, the Demeters, the except for the Hermes position is not. I wonder if I don't know, man. To be fair, I have no idea.
Oh, and in later books, yeah,
So
there is some change. So I don't know. Maybe it's just to the oldest child, or whichever child wants it or something.
I feel like maybe the legacy positions are to the men because people are sexist.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, so the Zeus and Poseidon positions are also legacy positions. So like the big three, they go through families, monarch-like. But the rest are like kind of different, and to the way that it's decided is different for each position, basically. We get that Demeter is one that is voted in, and Ares' position can be won in an arena. So there's, I'm not sure about all the other ones, but those are the ones that we just hear of.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting about it, is like Demeter, her name was not Demeter until she was elected into the position of Demeter. Like,
yeah,
Zeus's position, he wasn't called Zeus until he was in the position.
Yeah, I wonder if you're a legacy, if you just name all of your kids Zeus.
That'd be very funny.
It kind of would make sense, though. You probably would just name your kids whatever,
like George,
so that
Foreman.
they're used to it. That's true. So Hades used to rule the lower city, but Zeus has since taken over, and now he rules both the lower and upper cities, and they are separated by the river Styx. And apparently it's very hard to cross over from the upper city to the lower city, and vice versa. So like Zeus barely even does it. So like,
why is it hard? Do they say?
She just says it's hard. I think I don't know if they really get into it until later, but like they also talk about how it's hard to leave this, I'm calling it a country. I don't know what else to really call it. But Olympus, it's also hard to leave Olympus. And I'm guessing it's magic, but there isn't really a lot of magic in the book. So I don't really understand. But like, obviously nobody outside of Olympus knows about Olympus.
Yeah, but
I just kind of went,
I don't know. Because I wasn't taking it as this was a country that you could leave and then be in, like, England, like UK, sorry.
Yeah.
Or like you leave and all of a sudden, oh, I'm in China. You know what I mean? I just took it as it's Olympus, and then outside of Olympus, there's other not real things.
Oh, no, because later on, Persephone is thinking about what she wanted to do, and she thinks that like as soon as she gets her inheritance when she's 25, she's going to get help to break through the Olympus barrier and go to California to get a PhD at Berkeley.
Oh.
So like it is the real world. So I'm assuming I'm like the borders must be magic of some type. Because apparently it's very hard to get out of Olympus, and nobody knows about it.
I also thought that it was just because it was, like, heavily guarded. Like...
Oh. But, like, to get to the lower city's not heavily guarded.
No, but I was thinking to escape the quote-unquote country.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Because she does talk about bribing someone, so... I just assumed it was magic based on nothing. And I don't think there's any magic in these books, but
no.
That's the only thing that made sense to me. Anyway, we'll get more into it as we read more. But Persephone has a bit of an obsession with the Hades title. And she kind of, like, her main reason is she wonders if he'd be different than all of the others because he's actually living in the lower city and he's not around them. So maybe he wouldn't be so obsessed with power like everyone else is.
Oh, what a deduction.
I know. I'm like, that seems dumb. He's definitely not.
It just seems...
Persephone?
Yeah, it seems like, why would you think that? Like, what would make you think that?
It's like wishful thinking of like, oh, maybe somebody's different out there than all these scheming bitches. Persephone kind of thinks about her sisters, and she says they like all kind of took on a different persona when their mother became Demeter 10 years ago. And Persephone plays the bright, sparkly, obedient daughter, and Psyche plays it cool and quiet to fly under the radar. Eurydice? Sorry. Clings to life and excitement, and apparently Callisto fights their mother at every turn, so she actually isn't asked to attend events like tonight because her mother knows that it's more of a issue to bring her than it would be to just not have her around. Which is like, I feel like I'd want to be that daughter, to be honest. Demeter shows up and asks them why they aren't mingling, and Persephone says that she has a headache and she might leave early, but her mother says that she's expected to talk to Zeus. And Persephone then tells her mother that apparently it's rumored that Zeus killed all 3 of his wives, and her mother just says it's less messy than divorce.
God. Can you imagine, like, excuse... So does that mean she would be okay with it if someone killed her or killed her child? Like,
right? Well, based on what's happening, you're like, what the fuck?
Yes, it's wild.
Like, and especially to say that to her right before she's bringing her to Zeus, it's like, wow. I don't think her mom is good.
No.
So this whole party is apparently in Zeus's skyscraper, Dodona Tower. And that's, I guess he just has a room that has sculptures in it for fun.
I mean,
it just seems...
when you're the most powerful person in the country, why not?
Yeah. So they go to a throne room, and there's oil paintings of the current 12, apparently, is what the book said. But also, Hera is not... I guess it has the late Hera that was potentially killed by Zeus. Because that position isn't currently filled either.
Because it has to be Zeus's wife.
Yes, yeah, sorry. And he killed them. Allegedly,
yes.
Don't want to go to court over that. The current Zeus has apparently ruled for decades and is currently over 60 years old. And she, I guess, Demeter brings Persephone right up to Zeus, and he tells her that he's been trying to corner her for the last few months, which is icky. Yeah. And all she can think is, like, in 3 months' time, she's going to turn 25, she's going to get her inheritance, and then she's going to leave. Like, she can put up with anything until, for 3 months, she can do it.
Yeah.
Zeus then says it's time for their announcement, and she's just like, what the fuck is he talking about? But he just brings her to the front of the room in front of a bunch of people. And, like, as a callback to the last book we just read.
Yeah, from Blood and Ash at the very end. He says, we're getting married.
Yeah. And at least in this one, Zeus does ask-ish. In front of a room full of people where if you say no, he's going to murder you. But he does ask.
But at the same time, in From Blood and Ash, I didn't take it. He didn't stand up in front of a crowd of people and say, we're getting married. They were sitting and eating dinner.
Yes, he was just saying, we need to go home because to get married, you have to be home.
I didn't think he was announcing it to the whole room. I figured he was just, like, sort of just saying it to her and, like, Kieran, who is there, and, like, a couple of the other guys that maybe were at the table. So, I'd still take that over this. Considering he is, like, 60 and she is 24.
Yeah.
Blech.
Yes. Although in the last book, she's 18 and he's
like 300. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Valid. Valid.
So funny. Yeah. So
oh
Zeus.
My God, am I an ageist? Am I a terrible person?
Well, I wouldn't want to marry a 60-year-old now at this age. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to not want to marry a 60-year-old.
I guess.
Yeah. So he does ask her if, he just says,
marry me.
Persephone, will you marry me or whatever? And she is too shocked to speak. She had no idea this was coming, which is kind of wild. Like, everybody just completely blindsided her with it.
Yeah.
But she in her head, she knows she can't say no to him because he is Zeus. And her mother basically just answers for her and says, of course, to Zeus. And then she finally, like, snaps out of it and she says yes too. Which I guess is good. We like consent, even if it's coerced in front of a crowd. Fuck.
Yeah, sure. That's totally consent.
Right? Yeah. So then people start coming up to them. Oh, wait. Sorry. Somebody's actually recording it, and she knows that it's going to be on the internet and in the gossip magazines by, like, the next morning, basically, which is just interesting because it's like an interesting world because it's very similar to our world.
Yeah.
And like in this world, the 13 are like basically celebrities.
Yeah.
So Persephone and her sisters are like the children of celebrities and people are trying to get the gossip on them and stuff. So it's definitely an interesting world. People come up to congratulate them, but all Persephone can think is like he is putting a collar and leash on her and she won't be able to run away. Psyche comes and takes Persephone away because she knows she's not okay. So she's like, we're going to go to the bathroom. So they start to walk and go downstairs to go outside and get some air. And Persephone starts to panic because, like I said earlier, she had her whole life planned out. Like, she's already doing a master's at Olympus, and she was planning on getting out of here at 25 to do her PhD. But, like, that is all shattered now. Psyche is pissed at their mother. But Persephone... Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And Persephone is too, but she's just more worried about being murdered by Zeus like all of the other Heras, which is fair.
Valid.
And she's also just, like... She's very grossed out by him. Like,
yeah.
And, like, he, like, kissed her hand at one point, and it gave her, like...
Cringy.
The creepy crawlies. Yeah, he's very icky.
I find it really funny that the Demeter character has always been the biggest old bitch.
Yeah.
I didn't take that from the actual mythology. Like, she was always, I'm saying vengeful. Like, you couldn't cross her. Like, don't cross her. But I thought she was sort of one of the more, gentle's not the right word, but even-keeled.
Yeah.
Of the major gods and goddesses.
Yeah, that's fair.
But apparently, according to these stories, she is big ol' bitch.
Die hard bitch. Yeah. Yeah. Real bad. Really makes you wonder what she's thinking, because she literally just said murder is easier than divorce. So,
but like, what? I just don't understand how this is gonna help Demeter in any way. Like, she's already in that elected position. Like, there's no higher. She can't get any higher up than what she is.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't understand her motivation.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just to, like, have Zeus's ear and be able to, like, get him to do shit she wants, be in alliance. It's really dumb. Persephone kind of realizes, like, the right thing to do to protect her sisters and herself is to marry Zeus. because he apparently has killed his last 3 wives. Also, I think they said earlier that one woman came forward and accused him of, I'm assuming, sexual assault, but I don't think they said that explicitly.
Right.
And she disappeared. So Persephone says she doesn't know if that means like she got out of Olympus or she was murdered. So not great.
No.
So she is thinking that she has to marry him for the greater good of her family, basically. And it makes her feel so physically sick that she vomits in a bush at the thought of him, like, touching her skin. So he sounds like an awful person.
Yeah. And, like, even if he wasn't an awful person, if somebody makes you vomit at the thought of them touching you, maybe not the best match for you.
Yeah, really, though. Like, how's that gonna work?
I mean,
not great.
Yeah. So, find someone else.
Yes, exactly. Persephone asks Psyche to go get her purse and phone and tell their mother that, like, she had to leave because of her headache. And she knows, like, she kind of starts panicking at this point. After her sister leaves, she's like, if I don't get out of this tower now, I'm going to be stuck here forever. So she's, like, panicking a bit, and she's like, I'm going to leave. I don't want to involve my sister in any of this. So she just, like, walks out of there. And she starts to go south, and it's cold, and she's, like, a bit hysteric. She's also in, like, a like, formal gown, which is probably scandalous and tiny, and heels. And it's apparently January, so it's not a great time for her. She kind of thinks if she loses some fingers or toes to frostbite, it'll hurt them more than it hurts her because she won't be perfect anymore. Which is
her life
crazy.
Sounds real bad.
It does. She doesn't get far before she hears footsteps behind her, and she looks back, and there are 2 men following her. And she hears sounds from a nearby bar, and she thinks, like, she's going to go there because she'll be able to warm up, and maybe if she's in a crowd, people won't just grab her. Mm-hmm. But one of the men must take a shortcut or something because he ends up blocking her way in front of her, and she's not able to go in that direction, so she has to keep going south. And she kind of realizes she's being herded by these men. And, like, as she gets further and further away from Zeus's tower, the city is more dangerous and there are less people around. Like, there's a bunch of, like, closed up shops and stuff. It's just, like, a not as nice part of town. She's being pushed towards the banks of the river Styx. And apparently there are 3 bridges, but it's forbidden to cross them, and legend says you have to pay some kind of terrible price. So, like, obviously she's never tried to cross it before. I did appreciate this, though. She thinks about swimming, but she knows that the current is too fast and deadly, and it is too cold to swim across. And I'm like, good.
Which character did that again?
The other Persephone tried to swim across, and
she did, but it was a little bit of a different river Styx. Like, it wasn't just a regular river; it was a river. It's even worse.
It's even worse. It's even worse that she tried to swim across it.
Yeah, I agree.
The men are getting closer to Persephone, and one says that Zeus would like a word, and then he, like, laughs. And it's, like, a super creepy laugh. Ooh. And I'm like, what? Why? Why do you have to be creepy, too? Why is everyone creepy? Persephone knows, like, this is her only chance to escape. Like, if they get to her, they will end up bringing her back to Zeus's tower. And she'll probably just be locked in there forever. So she kicks off her heels, and she starts to run for her life. Cypress Bridge is in front of her, and she says she'd rather face the price of trying to get through the bridge than go back to Zeus. So she plunges through the arch, and it hurts. She says everything hurts. Her skin stings as if it's being scraped raw by some invisible barrier, and her feet feel like she's sprinting on glass. So, like, I kind of assumed that's magic. Like, it sounds like magic.
It does sound, but this is also I feel like this is the only instance of magic that exists.
Yeah. True. I guess it could be some kind of technology.
Yeah.
But I don't, yeah. There's something.
I find this very, like, climactic. Like, she literally was like, he was like, will you marry me? And she said, yes. And she's like, oh, I need to go pee. And then she, like, steps out, and then she's just gone. And then all of a sudden, Zeus is like, track her down no matter what. And, like, has two sketch bags chasing after her. Like,
yeah.
To me, that seems very, like, whoa, dude, you, like, 0 to 100, just like that.
Yeah.
Like,
and I wonder if, like, her mother and Zeus definitely, like, came up with this deal beforehand, and I wonder if her mother was like, she's not gonna like it, so maybe make sure she doesn't run away. That's all I can think. But yeah, it seems it's a lot for right away in the book. Yeah. The second chapter, basically. So Persephone's about halfway across the bridge, and she knows, like, she can't stop now, but she sees a man standing on the other bank, and she kind of, like, calls out for help, but he stays where he is, and she says, like, her body just, like, starts shutting down. So, like, I don't understand this barrier, but it sounds exhausting.
Was it just the barrier, or was it her, like, walking for so long in her high heels and her little dress in January that made her, like, I'm weak.
It could be that too. I'm assuming it's all of the above. The guy on the bank extends a hand towards her and beckons her forward, and she says the air relaxes around her so she can finally, like, push through this barrier. And he says, come. And, sorry. And she thinks...
If only
he might say that later, too.
Like, if only it was that easy. I'm just say it.
Yeah.
That would be dangerous, because I feel like the guys
Jesus
around
Christ.
the world would just be like, hey, you, come.
Oh, God.
Seriously, if a guy had the ability to do that to a girl, you don't think that guys would take advantage of that and randomly do it? Like, see a rando at a restaurant.
They would, 100%. It would be wild, wild west out here.
It would, yes. Girls orgasming all over the place.
Well, I guess it would be more normalized, so that'd be nice. She kind of thinks that this could be a terrible mistake, but she doesn't care. Anything is better than Zeus, no matter the price. Which is, like, an intense thing to say.
Yeah.
We get Hades' point of view now, which is just kind of funny that, like, she doesn't meet him, but we get his point of view. Like, obviously you knew he wasn't actually going to be a myth when you started reading this book, but I was like, oh, I thought it would be more like, I didn't think we'd just get his point of view and it would be like, hey, I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
But he is obviously the man standing on the other side of the river, and he sees a woman who doesn't belong in his side of the river with no shoes or coat in January trying to get across the bridge, and he sees the two men following her. And Hades knows, like, he can't help her, but he's intrigued by her.
Ugh, that word.
Yeah.
They all say that. Ooh, she's so intriguing.
That's what it has to be. You have to be intrigued by her. Someone so desperate to cross is intriguing.
My eyes are rolling.
He kind of thinks, like, she must be running from one of the 13 because she's clearly desperate enough to, like, try to cross over without permission. So apparently you can cross if you have permission and everything is fine. But if you don't have permission, it's like this painful thing.
And she does not have permission.
Yeah, so that's why it's, like, not great. As she gets closer to him, he recognizes her from all the gossip sites, and he knows that she's Demeter's second daughter, Persephone. He she asks for his help again, but he's like, he's not allowed. The treaty keeps him from being able to help anyone cross the river. So she needs to get to him before he can do anything to help her in any way.
Right. But, like, why can't he just say that? Why can't he say, I'm not allowed. You have to, like, get to me and I'll help you.
He said, come.
Yeah, but that's not good enough. Like, I require explanations on things.
You require communication?
Yeah.
No books require communication. There would be no books without miscommunication.
I feel like you should make a song.
Oh my god. I can't. I would lose my noodle. Yeah. As the men get closer too, because I guess they're following her, but like they're not allowed to cross either, so I don't really understand this bridge. Also, it seems like this is the longest bridge in the world because it's going on. This crossing is taking an insane amount of time.
But like they can't be allowed to cross because Zeus is not allowed to cross.
They're not allowed to cross, but they're still following, and they do get close enough that he recognizes them. So I'm like,
but I wonder if they're allowed to get to the very edge of the bridge. They just can't step into. Maybe that, because right now, she has not yet crossed the bridge. She is not yet under Hades' protection. So maybe they're hoping to get to her before she gets to Hades.
Yes. Yeah. Smart. Good job.
Telling you.
But it also does seem like this is the longest bridge in the world.
It definitely feels like a very, very long bridge. But I also feel like it needs to be a very long bridge because, like, the author really tries really hard to make, like, the two, so it's the upper city and the lower city, and she tries really hard to make us as readers aware that these are very completely separate entities, and they're very different. Like, the upper city is, like, luxe and lush and rich, and it's got all the fancy people. And then the lower city is like sort of more ragtag and more like, you know, it's more dilapidated and run down and maybe poorer, not poor in general, but not poor, just poorer than the upper. So like there's this huge divide anyway. So I feel like making the bridge really long is a really good way of like dividing between, I'll say, the haves and the have-nots. Yeah.
I kind of thought you were going to say because the river Styx is like, there's a ferryman on the river Styx. Like, it is a large river.
Well,
it's not too. Like, yeah. But anyway, big bridge. On we go.
Big bridge.
So as the men get closer, he does recognize them, and he knows that they are Zeus's enforcers. So he knows a lot about Zeus, apparently.
So, like, are they going to enforce her to return or enforce her to die?
I think they would enforce her to return at this point. As soon as she makes it to Hades, he grabs her and, like, spins her around and pins her to his chest by the throat. And the men stop, and one of the men says that she's Zeus's woman, which I hate that. I hate that.
Yeah.
They also say that where we're from, they call people somebody's woman, and it, like, boils my blood.
It's so, like, I find it
possessive.
Yes. It's like, no, I belong to myself, thank you.
Yeah. Hades kind of realizes that this is an opportunity that he's been waiting 30 years for. It's a chance for him to strike Zeus, and he can take someone important from him the same way Zeus took the two most important people from Hades. So there's some feuding going on here.
Yes.
And he does think, like, if the men come across the bridge now, they'll break the treaty. So that does make sense. But they do say that Zeus is going to kill him, and Hades says he's welcome to try, and that she is his now, and to tell Zeus he intends to enjoy his unexpected gift.
Yeah.
Yep. And then he throws Persephone over his shoulder and walks away.
Yeah, I love it.
Right? It's very caveman.
It is.
I'm fine with it.
Yes, in this instance, even though I'm like, oh, the woman thing is stupid, I'm still okay with the throw her over her shoulder and go.
Yeah. I guess when they finally start moving, she starts talking again, and she struggles and wants to be put down, but he's much bigger and stronger than her, and he just says no. And once they're out of sight of the bridge, he does let her down, and she like tries to take a swing at him. But like I envision her as super weak. Yeah. Like strength wise, like not like as a person. Yes. I just envision her not to be a very strong person.
Yeah.
Physically strong. So he puts her down for a second, and he's like knows that she's freezing. So he puts his coat on her, but he zips it up so her arms are just like stuck to her sides, so she can't do anything. And then he just throws her back over his shoulder, and he tells her that he'll put her down once they get inside. So
he essentially made her into like a sausage.
Yeah. Which I would be afraid I'd fall off someone's back and like smash my face.
Especially if you're struggling. It'd be like you're like a little worm.
A little worm. Hades says he notices Mint and Sharon?
I say
Chiron?
Yeah, that's what I say.
Chiron? Sorry, every time I'm going to ask how it's pronounced. And I've listened to audiobooks before with this name, and I just cannot. So they both show up to follow and guard Hades, and he says like he kind of thinks it's a little childish, but also he doesn't have an heir right now, so he needs to be watched at all times because somebody could easily kill him and the line would be dead, which is what everybody thinks anyway. He like turns down a shitty alley and then just goes through a door that unlocks when he like gets to it because there's like a camera and people are watching, I guess, and just let him in. And he's in an underground tunnel system, which seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I want one.
I know, me too. Persephone is like, this is inside, so put me down. But he's like, no, it's not really inside. We're in an underground tunnel. Mm-hmm. And she asks him if he kidnaps people often. And it kind of like makes her giggle to ask that question because she's just like...
I feel like she's delusional at this point.
Right. And he even like kind of assumes that she's going into shock because she sounds so calm and like she's giggling. And he doesn't answer, but she tells him she's never been kidnapped before. And he thinks that something must be wrong with her because she sounds really chipper. And he does point out like she ran to him, so he didn't really kidnap her. But she just says she was being chased and he seemed the lesser of two evils, but she's beginning to wonder if she made a mistake, which is probably smart to think.
Yeah.
He kind of just wants to ignore her and not talk to her, but he's worried that she has hypothermia, so he thinks he should keep her talking, which is the only reason he keeps answering her back.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, yeah. And because he finds her intriguing. So they go through another door and come out into a wine cellar, and Persephone says that she didn't see that coming. And he asks her if she saw any of this night coming, and she just says no, and it kind of like quiets her down a bit, and like she's really kind of seems like she's introspective right now.
Yeah.
But we're not in her head, so we don't know what she's thinking. He takes her to the kitchen because he says that there's a well-stocked first aid kit there, but Hermes and Dionysus are there. And Hermes apparently has 2 bottles of his best wine in her hands, and she already seems drunk as hell. And she says that they were at the party at Dodona Tower, but they cut out early because it was boring. And Dionysus has his head in the fridge searching for snacks, so Hades thinks he's either drunk, high, or both. And Hades tries to tell them, like, now isn't a good time, but Hermes, like, starts saying something to him and says his name, which makes Persephone jolt because she thought Hades was a myth.
Yeah, she doesn't even know who he is at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But Hermes realizes that it's Persephone over his shoulder, and Dionysus says that's impossible. because his head is still in the fridge. And you're like, yeah, it seems like it would be impossible.
Except here she is.
Yeah. Hades kind of thinks like he's tempted to just walk away, but he knows that they'll follow him. So he just sets Persephone on the counter, and she asks him then why Hermes called him Hades. And he's like, because it's my name. Like, duh. Hermes leans against Hades' shoulder and says she didn't think he had it in him to kidnap Zeus's fiance. And she kind of says, like, if they were married, she would be one of the 13. So, like, obviously, if they were married, he wouldn't be able to kidnap her because she'd kind of be, like, on the same playing field as him. Yeah. But, like, obviously the Hera role is, like, at the bottom of the 13.
Yeah.
Because, but Dionysus says he knew Hades had it in him because he's the boogeyman after all.
Sin.
Right? Hades is just done with the commentary and questions. So he calls Chiron, thank you, to take them to rooms that he has for them. He says last time he tried to send them home, they ditched their driver and they ended up swimming in the river Styx. So, like, maybe you can swim in the river Styx. I don't know, man. He kind of thinks about how they come around often and they're always uninvited. But Hermes can go wherever she pleases because of her position. And Dionysus has a standing invitation to come to, I guess, the lower city because of business matters. And that's all we kind of get of that. They negotiate that they're taking the pie and the wine with them, even though the wine is apparently worth $1,000 a bottle. And he says Hermes is too drunk to even taste it, so it's like a waste.
Yeah.
But it is. But they end up leaving, and Hades like gets back to Persephone, and she's bleeding, but she doesn't want to stay with him. She wants to be brought to a hospital, even though she knows, like, he says Zeus and your mother will be called immediately if you go to a hospital. And she's like, I can handle it. And he tells her to stop moving and he's going to check her feet because she has glass in her feet.
Mm-hmm. Yikes.
Yeah.
So we skip back now. Did your section, did it go back and forth between POVs or was it just the last one that?
Yeah, so I had 3 chapters. The first 2 were Persephone. The third one was Hades.
Okay. So mine do go back and forth. So we start with Persephone's POV. And we're finally getting sort of a look into her head after she found out that Hades is real and that, you know, her whole kidnapping, I guess I'm going to call it, even though it's not a real kidnapping. But she's, like, sort of shocked that he is real and he exists. Mm-hmm. But she says that she doesn't fault him for threatening her on the bridge. Like,
I guess when he held her neck, it was threatening.
I guess. Yeah. And, like, I guess him calling out to the guards and, like, saying, she's mine. Like, I guess we were calling that a bit threatening. So she's like, I'm okay with it because her other option was being given back to those guys and going back to Dodona Tower. And she's like, I'm not doing that. He is cleaning, like, her feet. She's got a bunch of broken glass in her feet. So he's, like, trying to clean that up for her. And he's being really gentle and kind. So she says she can tell, like, he's obviously not a terrible person. Even though, like, the Hades is spread around in Olympus the same way, the same way Hades, that we think of Hades, like, you know, we think of him as, like, the evil guy, he's the bad guy. So people in this place, even though he's not real, he's still sort of the bad guy.
Yeah. It almost makes him more scary because he's, like, a myth. He's, like, yeah.
So she's like, oh my god, like, he's cleaning my feet. So he's obviously not, like, a super terrible person. But her body is sort of finally catching up with her because she starts to hurt from going through the bridge, I guess. And she's shaking from the cold. But, like, she's not thinking about that. She's just stressed because she's always the girl with the plan. And right now she has no plan. She just had to escape. And she's really stressed out and worried about what her mother is going to do to her and what Zeus is going to do. Like, she says her mom might very well disown her for running away. But, like, Zeus may very well kill her. Like, straight up murder. And it's like, yeah, I would be scared too.
Very.
So I guess Hades, like, says, like, oh, you're shaking, like, you must feel, like, awful. And she's like, no, I'm fine. So she's being stubborn about how she's feeling, and I'm just like, oh, of course she is. What heroine wouldn't exist without not being honest about how they feel physically?
Yeah.
They all do it.
It wouldn't be awful to give her a cup of tea and a blanket. Like,
no, of course not.
She could ask for that, and it wouldn't be the end of the world.
No. Anyway, Hades sort of says, like, you're of no use to me dead. Which, I love that he's already there. Like, he's already, I don't want you to die.
Yeah.
So he noticed, like, again, so he noticed that she was cold, so he wraps her up in the blanket, and then he keeps taking glass out of her feet. Which sounds painful to have someone, like, I'm assuming he's got tweezers and is, like, hauling glass out of her feet. That sounds like it would hurt.
It's literally this week at my house, because I broke a plate, and then Jeff got glass in his feet twice, and I got glass in my foot once, so we've been pulling them out with tweezers.
Does it hurt?
Yeah, it's not great.
Good.
Yeah.
I once had an earring go in my foot.
Oh.
Like, and
they're so blunt.
Well, that, like, and it wasn't a sharp one. It was like a little stud.
Yeah.
And I remember having to pull it out of my foot.
That sucks.
Yeah. Never glass,
Gross.
though. I've never had to do glass.
Well, that's good.
Anyway, so Persephone sort of starts, like, as he's, like, hauling out glass, she starts freaking out because she's telling him, like, you're not supposed to be real. You're supposed to be a myth. And then she's thinking, shit, like, Hermes and Dionysus were here. So, like, that means he's friends with them. So, if he's, like, an active member of the 13, like, he might be just as bad as Zeus. Like, she's just sort of, she's starting to worry about herself, considering she's in a strange place with strangers.
Yeah.
So she's like, shit, maybe he's bad, just like they are, because 2 of his friends are part of the 13. She just randomly also points out to him and tells him that the party was an ambush and that she does not want to marry Zeus. And I like that she just, like, it's not one of those things, you know how so many times in books the main character feels like they have to hide things.
Yeah.
Out of, I don't know, like, you know, because of honor or because they don't want to show how embarrassed they are, or they don't want to show their vulnerability or whatever. And I just love that she's like, nope, this is what happened.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't want to marry him. I don't want to marry him.
Mm-hmm.
He then tells her that it's sort of her own fault because she's so pretty.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't say it in those words, but he essentially says something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And then he says, like, you know, if you want to play power games at Mount Olympus, like, these are the consequences. And she's like, I don't want to play games. He's like, well, your mother does, and so you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
And he also said, like, if she doesn't want to do that, like, if you didn't want to marry Zeus, then you had to do something about it. And I'm like, well, yes, of course. But her response is, I did do something. I left. I ran.
Yeah.
But Hades is like, that's like friggin' foreplay to Zeus. Like, he likes that.
He sounds like an awful person.
Does, yes. And he even said, eventually Zeus is going to track you down. you're going to marry him and be the obedient daughter that you are. And then by next year, you're going to be popping out little babies for him.
Oof.
So I guess...
Bleak.
Yeah, but Persephone has her peak moment here. She slaps him. Like, he literally says, that's what he says to her. He says, you know, you're the goody two-shoes, obedient daughter, so I would say within the year, you're going to be popping out little Zeus babies. So she goes, whack. Right in the face. Yes. And then she tells him she'll die first.
Indeed.
So not only did she slap him, she's gone real dramatic. She's gone for the drama on this.
Yeah.
Right? I'll die first before she marries Zeus.
Yeah.
So he tells her that she can stay for the night. He's very specific that she can stay only for the night. And she very easily agrees because she has nowhere else to go. Another thing that I really appreciate about her as a character is, like, she is remarkable at figuring out what's in her best interest, and she's not stubborn and trying to, like,
go out on the streets of a city that she doesn't even know.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
it's good that way. So, he takes her to a room, and he leaves her there. He actually, like, carried her because he didn't want her walking on the floor, potentially leaking blood on the floor. He closes the door, so the first thing she does is she calls her sisters to let them know that she's okay. I think her and her sisters are actually quite close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she calls them, and they're like, "Oh my God, where are you?" And her first thing is, "I'm okay, I'm safe." But then she doesn't want to tell them at first exactly where she is.
Mm-hmm.
But she also tells them, like, "Sorry, girls, but, like, I'm not coming back because I can't marry Zeus."
Mm-hmm.
And the sisters are like, "You know that you're, like, everyone here is going crazy looking for you and, like, asking where you are." And then, like, she says, like, "Even Zeus?" And they're like, "Yeah." And she was like, "But Zeus will know where I am because two of his thugs just chased me." And they're like, no, he is quite the doting fiance. He's, like, setting up search parties. He wants to get his own personal guard involved. And she finally lets slip, as she's on the phone, that she crossed the bridge. And the sisters don't think that that's enough to keep Hades away. They were like, unless Hades was real.
To keep Zeus away, yeah.
Yeah. Is that what I said?
You said keep Hades
Freak.
away.
So they don't... So the sisters are like, listen, you crossing that bridge is not enough to keep Zeus away. He's gonna come for you. And then another sister's like, I mean, if Hades was real, that would help. He would think twice about coming across then. And so then she sort of has to be like, well, he is real. And they all sort of go a little bit crazy. And then she was like, he is real, and he is definitely not as bad as Zeus. And they're like, you're crazy. But she's like, no, like, I promise you he's real, and he has actually been here the whole time. And so that's the little bombshell that they get. But again, we don't really get anything from it. So she is talking to her sisters on the phone, and they, like, initially don't think that they think she's crazy, right? Because they're like, you are crazy, Zeus is not, or you are crazy, Hades is not real, he's a myth. And she's like, no, he's real. And she's like, by the way, like, he's not as bad as Zeus is, so I'm not worried for myself while I'm being here. Like, she doesn't think she's in danger. But she also says, like, I'm not coming back. Like, I can't come back because I don't want to, like, marry Zeus. So they sort of ask her, like, okay, well, if you're going to stay there, like, is there something we can do for you? Is there something that you need? And she she needs money. Don't we all?
Yes.
She says, like, she sort of just has to last until her 25th birthday to get her trust fund, which comes from her grandmother. So that's not available until she turns 25. And she sort of says, like, when she gets that, she can be independent and she doesn't have to rely on her mother. Because as of right now, all of her money comes from her mother. So she has bank accounts, but it's her mother's money that's in the bank accounts. And she's actually thinking to herself, at this point, her mother's probably frozen her account because that's what she likes to do, to punish her children when they're being defiant, I'll say.
Yeah, that's a good word.
I don't want to say when they're being wrong or when they're being bad, because I don't think her refusing to marry a 60-year-old man is wrong.
No.
I think she's allowed. But her mother doesn't agree with that choice, so she says, whenever one of us disobey our mother, that's what she does. She freezes our accounts. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, that's really rude.
Really rude. Yeah.
It's really not nice of the mother.
It's not.
Demeter. No. But I mean, I guess it is what it is. So the sisters are like still on the phone, and they offer to bring her a burner phone because the assumption is she's using, I guess, one of Hades' house phones, and the assumption is that it's tapped and people can hear her.
Yeah.
She's sort of worried that, like, Zeus will be able to get that information. So ideally she should have a burner phone. She left her purse and everything back at the party. But she is worried about them bringing the phone into the lower city. She doesn't want them to have to come down. And she also doesn't want them implicated and, like, doesn't want the mother to sort of get back at them or, sort of
blame them for her.
Yeah. Or, like, do anything that would potentially get them in trouble. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't want to involve them in any way. So really she just called to say, I love you guys. I'm safe. Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. Tells them again, like, I'm not coming back. Like, I can't. And they're sort of, like, trying to convince her and being like, well, wait, like, let us help you. And they're trying to be good sisters. And she just, like, says goodbye and hangs up on them. And, like, I sort of see that. It's, she's trying to get as, a clean break as she can. Because she is now under the assumption that she won't see them anymore.
Yeah.
So I find the next bit really hilarious because she hangs up. She's super tired mentally, physically. She just is tired. And there's this nice big bed and it looks super plush and she really wants to sink into it. But she checks the door to her bedroom and there's no lock on it. And she doesn't feel that safe. So instead, she pulls like a side table in front of the door, grabs the bedclothes, goes into the bathroom, which does have a lock on it, puts the bed sheets and bedclothes in the tub, and she sleeps in the bathtub with the door locked. I mean, I don't understand really why she's having this reaction. Like, why she thinks it's so unsafe. She hasn't seen it.
Hasn't seen what?
Like, she hasn't been in the lower city long enough to know whether it is safe or not. She just doesn't know enough. Like, I don't understand why she feels so unsafe.
I think it's just, like, he's the boogeyman. He's one of the 13. Like,
I guess.
I can see wanting a lock on your door. I don't think I'd want to sleep in the tub, though. So I would be like, safety, comfort. I'd probably choose comfort.
But, like, would you really feel that unsafe after he literally just, like, sat at your feet and picked all the glass out?
Yeah. I guess you also don't know who else is in the house.
That's true.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I would probably sleep in the bed, but I'd also probably be murdered immediately in any of these situations.
Yeah. I sort of agree. Anyway, so she goes to sleep in the bathtub. She says it's big. Like, there's nothing... Like, she says it's not like a little baby bathtub. It's a sizable bathtub. So the next morning, we start with Hades' POV. Because remember, I said that mine switch back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So, he goes down to the kitchen, and Hermes is there eating ice cream. She spent the night. And he's sort of thinking to himself, like, how he remembers the first time he met her. And it was about a month after she became Hermes. She snuck into his office, and he almost shot her. So now in her mind, that situation has made them besties.
Yeah.
And then about 6 months after that, Dionysus started coming around his house with Hermes. And, like, he tries to lock them out and everything. He's like, how did you get in? But because she's the messenger of the gods / like, I guess sneaking around spying is sort of her skill. And it's what she does for the 13. So because of that, she can still get into his house whenever she wants. Like, I guess she picks his locks or whatever. But he, like, actively tries to keep them out and kick them out. He's like, we're not friends. Why are you here?
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, like, I feel like he would like to open up. But the fact that he knows he can't really trust her because she's one of the 13. And therefore, like, she answers directly to Zeus. Like, Zeus uses her to accomplish things.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that, like, anything that Hades does or has in his house, aka Persephone, Hermes can go and then tell Zeus. So he doesn't really trust her, but I think he would like to.
Yeah, I think so too.
Dionysus comes out next. He also spent the night. And he sort of is like, man, like, what's Persephone doing? Because he sort of assumed that she was this sunny, like, perfect little daughter and thought she was boring.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she ran out on the party and crossed the river Styx, he was like, oh, maybe she's not so boring after all. And Hermes is like, oh, that's just her public persona. She's not really like that. She's completely different around her sisters. And Dionysus is sort of like, really? Like, and they're kind of like, are you spying on them? Like, and it just seems like Hermes just, like, also really just wants a friend.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for her to be spying on them.
No.
She's just doing it because.
Because they seem different than everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually sort of says that, like, the 4 sisters actually hate the 13 passionately. And yeah, sort of, like, insinuates that, like, the 4 sisters don't want power. They don't want more money. Like, which is bizarre for this world. Like, that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants money. Everybody wants more power. They just want to keep going and going and going. Which is sort of what Demeter's doing. Like, she's the highest she can get.
Yeah.
Unless she wanted to become Hera. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's not really further for her to go. But yet she's still trying to cultivate more power by aligning herself with Zeus. Well, aligning her child with Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just funny because the sisters, like, they don't want that. They talk a little bit about the engagement, and Dionysus says that, like, even though during the engagement itself and the question, Persephone tried to, like, keep a smile on her face and, like, not show anything, he could tell that she looked terrified. And he could tell that it was a shock to her system. And then he says, I hope she lasts longer than the last Hera. I wonder how long the last one lasted.
I know. I want to know.
And Hermes sort of adds in, like, yeah, like, they totally surprised her. Like, I know they sprung it on her on purpose so that she couldn't say no.
Yeah.
Little did they know it would cause her to run away. So Hermes, like, doubles down and says, like, the Demeter sisters do not like their mother's ambition, and they do not want the extra power, and just sort of, like, reinforces to Hades and to us as readers that the four sisters are different. They're special. So Hades is sort of, like, judging her public persona at this point and being like, I'm surprised she ran away. Like, why wouldn't she want to be the next Hera? And, like, it would give her so much authority and power and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And Hermes is sort of like, no, like, just ask her what she wants. Instead of assuming that you think that she would want to be married to Zeus and all this, like, ask. Mm-hmm. Sit her down and ask her, because I guarantee you she's not going to say that she wants to marry Zeus. Obviously not. She ran away.
Exactly.
Like, that's not a normal reaction when you've been proposed to. I don't think. Is it?
I've never been proposed to. But maybe I would run away. Who knows?
Maybe. Anyway, so they leave. Like, they get ready and they just go. They gotta go back to their jobs. And he thinks about what he can do with Persephone. Like, she's in his house. What's he gonna do with her? He half wants to rub his nose in the fact that she ran to him instead of, like, that was her alternative. She would rather run to the lower city, to Hades, rather than marry Zeus. Mm-hmm. And he thinks to himself that, like, him and his people have both suffered at the hands of Zeus, so it would serve him right. Like, he wants revenge. Like, he wants to stick it right in his face.
Yeah.
But he says the idea of using Persephone as a pawn for revenge doesn't really sit well with him, considering, like, she was sort of just shoved into a situation that she didn't want. She was sort of used as a pawn by her mother and Zeus. So, like, he doesn't want to add to that.
He's such a good guy.
He is such a good guy. But at the same time, it's like, just talk to her, man.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like, talk to her first. Yep. So he's worried because she hasn't woken up or come out of her room or anything like that. So he's sort of worried about her. So he makes her a coffee, and, like, he's like, she looks like the type not to drink her coffee black, and just, like, douses cream and sugar in it. I would never be that bold.
To assume that?
To assume someone's coffee preference and, like, just dump cream and sugar in it, I would die.
Right? I know. I can't imagine. And also, if someone did it for me, I would just be like, oh, thank you so much. And then I'd, like, suffer through it and hate it. But I wouldn't say, oh, you're completely wrong.
Well, no. I actually, so it's really funny. I used to work at an after-school program. And every once in a while, when one of the parents came to pick up their child, they would bring all the workers there. They would bring us coffee from a local chain that is notoriously bad for terrible coffee.
Yes.
And so I drink my coffee black, and he was like, what do you he just said one day, by the way, what do you guys have in your coffee? And I said, I drink it black. And so he brought that coffee, and he brought it, and I suffered through it, and even though it was absolutely disgusting, but I had to suffer through it. But, like, just if you don't know someone, you just I would never throw ingredients in a coffee and bring it to them and expect them to drink it.
I would just bring, like, a little bit and a little bit of sugar.
Yeah, like, bring a little bit on the side. And, like, what if they're lactose intolerant and they need soy milk? Or, like, can't or just drink black because they can't drink milk. Like, what if they're diabetic and they need to use sweetener? Like, you don't just assume that sort of thing.
Exactly. Wild.
It is wild. Anyway, so he takes it to her room, tries to open the door, and is like, oh, I can't open the door. So he does, like, push it in so that he can get in. He's really offended that she felt the need to barricade herself in. And I don't know what makes him think this, but he thinks, like, oh, she barricaded herself in. She must think I'm scary and terrible, and therefore she must want power, and everybody wants power, so why wouldn't she want it? And the easiest way is going to be for her to marry Zeus, so I don't understand why she doesn't want to marry Zeus, and blah, blah, blah. And he sort of thinks she's going to get up and, like, change her mind. He sort of sees her as this, like, pampered princess. Like, knows nothing about her life.
And has decided.
But has decided, yeah, that he takes on... He judges her by the public persona that the mother crafted for her. But then he's also getting mad that she's judging him on his non-existent public persona because everyone thinks he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He's being a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So he knows she's in the bathroom, knocks on the door, and they sort of have, like, this terse, like, exchange. She's upset because he woke her up. She was still asleep. And she's sort of mad at him for just barging into her room. And he's like, it's my house.
I guess.
I disagree. Like, I don't disagree. I do think if he knocked and she didn't answer, then he could come in. But, like, what if she was naked and changing?
Yeah. Into no clothes because she doesn't have any. But what if she slept naked? Anything, really. Yeah.
Anyway, she opens the bathroom door. And his first thought is that she looks deliciously rumpled, quote unquote, wrapped up in her comforter. I guess. I think she must not have slept in clothes.
Oh, fair. Which makes sense. She just had a dress.
Yeah.
So
because, like, she was wrapped. She had to wrap herself in the comforter in order to talk to him. So.
Makes sense.
They chat a little bit more, and she tells him randomly about his statue at Hades, or at Zeus's tower, the Dodonda Tower, and tells him how it has, like, the black shroud over it. And that indicates that his bloodline has ended and he's not supposed to exist. So she's sort of like, why are you here? How do you exist?
Yeah. And
essentially he's like, it's just the deal I got going on. Like, I run this section, everybody else sticks to their section.
Yeah.
Her feet, like, they must be pretty badly cut. Like, I know they had glass in them. Like, I understand that. But, like, if you get one or two little shards of glass in your foot, you could take those out and you could still walk fine.
But it must have been large.
Yeah. She must have had, like, a lot of glass, and, like, it must have been pretty decently wedged in there and made pretty significant wounds, because she's standing and then feels the need to sit because her feet start to hurt.
Yeah.
And he's also worried she's going to bleed on his carpet. Valid point. If I had a nice carpet, I would also not want blood on it.
Well, I don't want blood on any carpet because it's so hard to clean.
True. So she sits on the bed, and because she's sitting on the bed, and again, all rumpled, like her hair is a bit disheveled, and she's wrapped in this comforter, he starts to think about other things that could happen on a bed. Like sex. What? That would rumple her.
Yeah.
I just, like, the only thing that I find about this scene and their relationship, I find it very odd, because they've never met each other. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'd have sex with you.
Yeah.
And then they just do. Like, not yet, obviously, but, like, I don't know. I feel like there should be a little bit more development than that.
Yeah, I guess. But the thing is, like, she is obsessed with him as, like, a figure. Like, she was obsessed with the thought of Hades as a person. So I can see on her side why she's just like, yeah, I just want to bang him so that I can say I banged Hades.
Yes.
But it's similar to A Touch of Darkness in that we're like, why is he so obsessed with her for no reason?
Yes, it is. Oh my god, we found a similarity.
We did. Maybe, and I guess, is that what's in the myth as well? Or not?
I don't know. Like, and it very well could be. I don't really remember. Obviously he had a thing for, like, obviously Hades had a thing for Persephone. Otherwise, why would he? I just figured he wanted somebody to stay with him.
Yeah.
I just thought he was lonely.
Fair.
So, we're still in Hades' point of view. So he sees her sit down on the bed, gets his thoughts going to, like, sexy times. And then she proposes something. She says, I think I have a way for us to help each other. Which really throws him off balance for a second. Like, he's really like, wait, what?
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah. I just love the way her mind works. Like, she went to sleep, and did she come up with this idea in her sleep, or was she up all night tossing and turning and finally coming up with this plan?
Well, she was sleeping in a tub, so I'm not assuming that she slept well. Personally, I'm assuming she slept terribly.
But I don't know. I feel like if you grabbed every single blanket off your bed, all your pillows, I feel like you could, like, it wouldn't be great, but I feel like you could get a decent amount of sleep.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Anyway, switch back now to Persephone's POV. So she was thinking during the night about her situation and how she has nobody to turn to. Like, she can't ask her sisters, but she didn't want, like, if she, like I said earlier with the whole phone thing, she doesn't want to have to ask them for money, even though one of her sisters is old enough and has their trust fund. So, like, she could ask that sister for money, but she doesn't want to because she's trying to leave the city with this money. And she knows that if she does leave the city, means that if anybody gets angry, it's the sisters that will have to deal with the consequences, right? If she leaves, Demeter and Zeus will both be like, okay, who gave her the money? And then they'll punish probably that sister.
Yeah.
Or just all of them and be like, you guys knew where she was going. Like, she doesn't want to put her sister in harm's way.
Yeah.
She also knows that she still has 3 months until her birthday, which is a long time to stay. Like, 3 months is not quick. 3 months is, like, a decent amount of time until her birthday. So, like, she's got a decent time to wait. She can't just, like, chill until then.
Yeah.
If it was a few days, yeah, I'd just be like, hey, let me lie low here for a couple of days. I'll, like, cook you meals or something like that in exchange, and then I'll be out of your hair. 3 months is a long time, especially to ask a complete stranger to house you.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Can you imagine just, like, going to a stranger's house and say, can I stay here for 3 months?
No, I cannot. Although he has a really big house, I guess. Like, maybe they wouldn't even have to see each other.
Yeah, but they only have one kitchen.
Just order
just
takeout.
I don't know if they have takeout.
Yeah. I kind of assume he, like, has a chef or something, though.
Maybe.
But not really the point.
So, I guess she's sort of insinuating to him that she's worried she's not safe. And he sort of tries to assure her that, listen, you're definitely safe. And he tells Persephone that him and Zeus have a very specific treaty and signed by all of the 13. So Zeus and anyone that works for Zeus are not allowed into the lower city at all. And Hades and anyone that works for Hades cannot go into the upper city at all. If either of them break that rule, it's an act of war. And not just by, like, it wouldn't just be a war between Zeus and Hades. Like, if Zeus breaks the treaty, then the rest of the 13 would have to declare war on Zeus. If Hades breaks the treaty, the entire 13 would have to declare war on Hades.
So, does her mom know that Hades exists?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think all the 13 know
Yeah.
know that he exists. I think they all keep it a secret because they don't want to deal with it and because Zeus is a jackass and did what he did.
Yeah. I kind of thought so too, but I just don't really remember her mother knowing. But I guess we'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does though, I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
Anyway, so he just assures her, like, nobody from Zeus's, like, as long as you are here on this side, nobody from Zeus's, like, anything can get here and get you. Like, don't even worry about it. And she sort of, like, you know, says, I know that you hate Zeus. And he actually tells her, yeah, it's because, Zeus, the current one, killed his parents when he was a little boy. So him and Zeus have this huge rivalry. I don't know why Zeus thought he had to kill previous Hades, but there's just a huge rivalry there. And she therefore suggests, you hate Zeus? Why don't you use me to get back at him? So essentially she's suggesting exactly what he thought about in the kitchen, using her as a pawn, but now she's consenting to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of love the next bit because he sort of says to her, like, you didn't seem like the type to me to want to be used like a pawn between two men. And I sort of low-key love it that he's, like, looking out for her as a person. Like, you are a human. You are a strong, independent woman. Like, he's trying to say, like, you don't deserve to be used as a pawn between two men in, like, their pissing match.
Yeah.
And she just sort of is like, well, I mean, it can't get any worse. Like, I need to stay here for 3 months. So she asks him to stay for 3 months, and he's like, no. And he's like, I don't understand, like, what am I going to get out of this deal? Like, how can we make it worse for Zeus than it already is? Because he already knows you're here. So what's the added benefit for me of you staying? Right? Like, how can we make it worse for him? And then she says, well, Zeus doesn't like tarnished goods, so tarnish me. Woo!
We're getting there, guys.
We are slowly but surely getting there. And he tells her flat out no. And he says it's because Zeus has spies all around and will know for a fact that the relationship is a sham. Like, they can't just say, oh, they're having sex, and then, like, them not actually, like, everyone will know that they're not actually doing it. So she's like, okay, fine, let's do it for real. And I love how to the point she is. She's like, okay, like, fine, we can't lie about it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I love it.
And he asks if she's a virgin, flat out.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that she's like, no.
Yeah, same.
And she's like, despite what my mother would have everyone believe, no, I'm not. The next line really pissed me off, though, because he says that makes her offer much less tempting. Yeah.
Ew.
Like, the fact that she's not a virgin, so he's not taking her V card, so, like, it's not as tempting of an offer. And the next line is, like, my favorite line ever. She responds with, she didn't think she thought he would be one of the few people who didn't worship the altar of the hymen.
Yeah, I do love that one.
She assumes that, like, he's a decent enough person not to care about virginity and not to put worth in virginity, which we say all the time about how we hate that is a thing.
Yeah.
And she's sort of thinking to herself, like, she really wants him to say yes, and, like, also she's already better off. Like, even if he says no, she's already better off because they're in a room together, and he doesn't make her skin crawl the way Zeus does.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, she's like, I'm already up. Like, the fact that I can be in the same room with this guy and not want to, like, vomit is a good thing.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to double down because he's still, like, on the fence. And she's like, if you think you're forcing me or coercing me or whatever, like, I'm not. She was like, I wouldn't suggest this option if I didn't want to. Insinuating, like, she wants to have sex with him. And that sort of, like, shocks him. He's like, wait, what? And he tells her, like, no, again. And she sort of doesn't understand because she's like, last night you were calling me mine, but, like, today you want nothing to do with me. And I'm sort of like, I agree with that. But also, he didn't know her. And I thought, I took the whole, like, him doing that, I took that just to sort of show, like, as a show in front of Zeus's men.
Yes, 100%. That's what I took it as well.
So, like, I don't think she should be taking this as correct. Like, I don't think she should be taking that act as a declaration of truth.
Yeah.
But he's still, like, he's saying no. So she asks if he's attracted to her. And he says no.
There you go.
Yeah.
Book's over.
Yeah. I mean, we both know that is a huge fib because he just talked about her being rumpled and wanting to have sex with her on the bed. But she admits in her head that, like, she would really, really like to have sex with him. And it sort of, like, turns her on in more that it would be a screw you to Zeus. Like, she likes, that makes it better. Because Zeus, too, sort of thought of her more as an acquisition than a love interest. Like, he didn't love her. She's something to get, something to acquire.
Yeah.
But, like, he says no, like, flat out. And she's still, like, she tries her best to not sound hurt by it. Like, she puts on that sunny personality thing, like that smiley disposition. And she's like, okay, no harm, no foul. I'll think of something else.
I love her.
I know. I love her too. And she starts to think of, like, other, like, what else could I do? And she's like, oh, I'm probably going to have to ask my older sister for money, and I'll just borrow it, and then as soon as I get access to my trust fund, I'll give it back, and, like, you know, she's thinking like that. And then as she's thinking, she starts, like, getting up and moving around and walking, and she almost, like, bumps into Hades.
Mm-mm.
And then he says, sorry, I'm not used to bargaining for sex. And then he agrees. I almost wish we had the same scene from his mind because, like, I don't understand why he went from flat out no, not even a no, like, not even a little bit of a no, hard no, to, yeah, okay.
Fine, let's do it.
Yeah, like, I wish I knew why he changed his mind.
Yeah, that's fair.
And anyway, so he says, that means that you belong to me for the next 3 months. And he also says, like, if we're going to do this, it has to be in public. Because I have sex in public. So that's just his jam.
There it is.
And she'll also get his protection. And so they seal the deal with a kiss. And she thinks about how now she'll finally get to try out all the darker things that she thought about doing, considering here she can shed that, like, sunny, like, easy, biddable woman that her mother once, like, made her to be. She doesn't have to be that there. She can actually, like, try out some of the darker things that she, like, likes to think about. So, like, I guess we're getting sort of her real personality. That's what we're gonna get during the rest of this book.
Yeah.
So skip back over to Hades' POV, and we're in the kiss now. And he says he was kissing her, and he said it was like summer. And they were kissing, and he could tell that she was getting into it and maybe thinking that, like, they were going to start. But he, like, he lets go, and he takes a step back. Because he said there were some lines that he didn't cross. Like, he didn't want to take advantage. And I don't understand. Like, you just agreed to have sex with her for 3 months. So, like, what's the advantage? What line is he crossing?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand his reasoning for some of this.
Yeah. I don't, like, he's I don't know. I don't get it.
No.
So, he tells her that they'll start later today. And he's going to go find her some clothes. He sort of but thinks to himself that he wants her more than he has a right to. And again, I don't understand where this is coming from. They don't know each other. How can he want her more than he has a right to? One, he doesn't know her enough to want her. Like, the way he's talking, it's like he already loves her, but he doesn't know who she is.
It's always the way with them, I guess. It's insta-love.
Insta-love, yeah, sure. I'll buy that. So he meets some guy named Andreas in his office. So it's this, like, 70-year-old guy that sort of raised him after his parents died. So, like, sort of an uncle figure, father-y type figure. He tells Andreas what his plan is, minus the sexy bits.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't say, oh, I'm going to use her sexually to get back at Zeus. He just, includes her name and says he's going to rub Zeus's nose in it that he has her. Mm-hmm. But Andreas is really weary because I would be insulted. He sort of thinks that Zeus will outmatch Hades or, like, will outthink him, fight him, like, just thinks Zeus is more powerful. And, like, he is in terms of power. But, like, have faith in your almost son.
Have faith in your boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hades is sort of like, no, he's not better than me. Like, he's like, I've been Hades now for 16 years. I know he's actually been Hades longer than that because he's been Hades since he was little. But he's been running the empire of Hades for 16 years. So he thinks that he is really powerful. Like, he's built himself up to be really powerful too, and doesn't think Zeus will outdo him.
Yeah.
And he also doesn't think that Zeus would have the balls, essentially, to try and kill him, considering, like, they have the treaty in place. Like, he's putting a lot of faith in this treaty.
Yeah.
But, like,
which is probably dumb.
Yeah, because, like, what good is the treaty if, okay, say if Zeus does send dudes over to kill him, or her, or grab her, or whatever. If they went over to kill Hades and succeeded, the treaty did shit all. Like, sure, they could punish Zeus for sending the people over when they weren't supposed to, but, like, Hades is still dead.
Yeah, and there's no heir, so it doesn't, like, nobody's gonna take up the fight after him.
Yeah, so...
it doesn't really... He's putting a lot of faith in this.
Yeah, he is putting a lot of faith in it, and I think that's short-sighted.
Yeah. I also think Andreas is just, like, worried for him. Like, I think that's why he tells him that he's gonna get defeated. I think he's just worried. He's just his little boy.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to lose him, too.
Oh, for sure.
He's like, pop out a baby, and then you can go get yourself killed.
Yeah. Someone else for him to raise. So Andreas, like, really isn't sold on this plan and doesn't think it's safe. So Hades is like, okay, I'll double the guard at the bridge. So Andreas also reminds Hades that, like, he can't keep Persephone. And he's like, Zeus will not allow it. And he says, your people cannot withstand that. And he's like, that's okay. I don't want to keep her.
Yeah.
And we're like, you shouldn't want to keep her after knowing her less than a day.
Yeah.
The fact that they're even discussing keeping her.
Yes.
She's not something to keep. She is a person. She gets to decide where she goes. But he's like, I don't want to keep her. Like, he still thinks that she's a princess and wouldn't be able to handle, like, a long-term stay in his city. Like, it's a little bit more rough. So, Chiron comes in and has sort of just taken over Andreas's role as, like, an advisor, like, planner, sort of, I don't know, enforcer sort of type person, right-hand person.
Yeah. Head of security.
Yeah. So has taken over his job, Andreas's job, but Hades did not share the same plan. Like, Chiron came in. He wasn't immediately like, okay, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing with Persephone. He didn't say anything because he says he hasn't earned that loyalty yet. So, like, Hades got some trust issues.
Yes.
All of a sudden, someone calls him on the phone. It's Zeus. And he essentially calls him a little shit and tells him to return his wife. And it's like, she ain't your wife yet. Like, you were engaged for less than an hour.
Yeah.
So, too bad for you. But he essentially says, like, give me back my wife or I'll destroy everything you love. And Hades sort of starts taunting Zeus and is like, he's like, it must really sting that, like, she'd rather be here over the bridge with me doing, like, all the depraved things that I'm going to do to her rather than go back with you. And he essentially was like, don't worry, like, I'll give her back when she's finished. And he sort of reiterates that, like, I will destroy everything you love. Everything you love, I will get. I will annihilate. And Hades essentially says that Zeus is too late because everything he loves died 30 years ago.
Unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. But, like, I think that's also short-sighted. I mean, I know he's obviously not going to start naming people that he cares about. Be like, no, don't kill this person.
Yeah.
Like, he's obviously not going to do that. But, like, he cares about Andreas. He cares about Chiron. He cares about, like, you know, I don't care.
The lower city in general.
Yeah.
Really. Like, that's really his biggest thing. Yeah.
So, like, I don't think it's fair to say that everything he loves is dead.
No.
But essentially he said, I love the line. He says, everything he loved died 30 years ago, and now it's his turn to take what Zeus loves. Ooh. And I love it. Yeah.
What an ending.
Yeah. What an ending. So that is it for this section. I liked it. But again, it's one of those, like, the relationship thing where they are sort of, I don't know, it just weirds me out that they're so, like,
in love with each other for no reason.
Yes. Even though, like, in certain cases I really like it, but in this case I'm not liking it as much. Maybe because it's so real worldy. Yeah,
I get that. I kind of just take it as more of they have a real physical attraction to each other because they're both beautiful and they just want to bang.
Valid point. Maybe that's all it is right now.
Yeah.
And then it'll get better later.
I think that's what it is, but that's how I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
In my brain.
Okay. I'm here for it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, and be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at coffeeandcoread.
Yeah, so next week we will be reading chapters 8 to 14 of Neon Gods, so make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.